The first fatal mistake survivors make is not hunger, scarcity, or contamination. It is confidence. A quiet, familiar confidence inherited from a lifetime of supermarkets, expiration dates, and the illusion that the human senses are reliable instruments. People think they know what spoiled food looks like. They think they understand off smells, discoloration, texture changes. They believe that danger announces itself, that poison comes with signs. And this belief kills more survivors than starvation ever will. Confidence creates shortcuts. Shortcuts create assumptions. Assumptions bypass verification. And in any hostile environment, bypassing verification is the same as choosing death. You've seen it before. Someone finds a sealed can that looks fine, a piece of meat that smells okay, grains that seem dry, a stew warmed quickly over an unstable flame. They trust their instincts, take a bite, and tell themselves it was the right call. Hours later, the symptoms begin, delayed, subtle, irreversible. By the time they realize the mistake has already made its final decision. The truth is brutally simple. Your senses lie. Your memories lie. Your intuition lies. The environment does not. Spoilage begins long before it changes appearance. Bacteria thrive without odor. Parasites hide in pristine flesh. Industrial residues have no taste, and toxins are perfectly content to stay invisible until they've breached your bloodstream. In a world where survival depends on precision, the only thing more dangerous than contaminated food is the human tendency to assume it isn't. This is where the doctrine begins. Not with fear, but with correction. You are not here to trust your instincts. You are here to dismantle them. You replace confidence with verification. You replace assumptions with tools. And you replace human error with operational discipline, because in the fight between intuition and chemistry, chemistry wins every time. In a post-collapse world, hesitation is fatal, but guessing is worse. The survivor who relies on sight, smell, or memory is already compromised because contaminants do not announce themselves. They do not glow, they do not taste strange, and they do not offer warnings. They sit quietly inside liquid pools, scavenged canned goods, wild vegetation, abandoned grains, or improvised water sources. This is why the first tool in the modern survivor's arsenal is not a weapon, not a knife, not a fire source. It's the multi-spectrum food test strip. A thin, nameless piece of chemistry paper that replaces an entire pre-collapse laboratory by doing one thing ruthlessly, revealing what your instincts cannot. These strips detect chemical residues left behind by pesticides, industrial runoff, heavy metals, and bacterial activity. They expose the presence of E. coli, salmonella, coliform bacteria, and the chemical signatures of rot long before the food becomes visibly suspicious. In the old world, these hazards were managed by supply chains and regulations that you never had to think about. In this world, you must become the regulator. A test strip becomes your first line of intelligence. Your reconnaissance unit deployed into an unknown environment. You do not chew until the strip confirms. You do not drink until the strip verifies. This is the new protocol, and you will find them where civilians never looked. Sealed drawers of educated households, medical kits in forgotten clinics, biology classrooms, abandoned universities, aquaculture stores filled with water testing kits, survivalist garages stocked with pesticide or lead test kits. These places were once mundane. Now they are strategic. The people who died left behind the tools they never thought they would need. You are not them. You do not trust appearances. You trust data, and data begins here. with the strip that tells the truth when your senses fail. Pathogens do not care about your hunger, your intentions, or the illusion that heat alone will protect you. In the aftermath of societal collapse, bacteria and fungi adapt faster than you can. Surfaces become breeding grounds. Airborne spores settle into every crack. Wild-caught meat carries invisible biofilms. Scavenged produce hides microscopic colonies beneath unbroken skin. The pre-collapse world taught you to believe that washing was enough. The new world teaches you the opposite. Water without certainty is contamination. Heat without precision is failure. And touching anything is a calculated biological risk. This is why the portable UVC sterilization wand becomes a non-negotiable asset. It is the tool that cleans what fire cannot reach and what filtration cannot remove. UVC is not symbolic light. It is controlled radiation engineered to rupture cellular DNA, annihilating pathogens without chemicals, without heat, without water. It kills bacteria, neutralizes viruses, shreds mold spores, and destroys parasite eggs that cling to the surface of scavenged food. In the collapse, versatility is power, and UVC grants total surface dominance. With it, you sanitize fruit when water is too scarce to risk. You purify the skin of game meat before cutting. You neutralize mold infiltration on scavenged bread or grain sacks. You reclaim utensils, cutting boards, and containers that would otherwise be vectors of sickness. It is silent, it is precise, and it requires only the discipline to use it every single time. You will salvage this tool from places shaped by modern fear, cities obsessed with hygiene and convenience. Hotels kept them for sterilizing remotes and linens. New parents bought them to protect their children. Electronic stores stocked them as luxury gadgets for travelers. Logistics warehouses stored entire pallets of them under layers of dust. These locations, overlooked by looters chasing weapons and food, now become treasure vaults for the disciplined. You are not looking for abundance. You are looking for continuity of survival. And survival belongs to the one who sterilizes before they touch, not after they get sick. In the old world, rinsing food under a faucet was an afterthought, an automatic gesture backed by an invisible infrastructure of treatment plants, chlorination systems, filtration towers, and chemical monitoring frameworks. When the fall shattered that infrastructure, water reverted to its original form, an unpredictable chemical soup carrying metals, parasites, solvents, industrial dust, agricultural runoff, and dead bacterial colonies. Washing food in contaminated water is not cleaning. It is loading it with new threats. This is why the carbon block microfilter becomes the structural backbone of every safe food protocol. It is not a luxury. It is your only means of ensuring that the act of washing does not become the act of poisoning. A carbon block microfilter does what your eyes cannot. Its dense compressed carbon matrix traps chemical residues, neutralizes volatile compounds, binds pesticides, and strips out organic contaminants that survive boiling. In a world where water sources shift from rivers to broken pipes, from storage tanks to rooftop puddles, filtration is no longer about comfort. It's about control. When you rinse scavenged vegetables, you are removing invisible films of exhaust dust and chemical particulates. When you wash knives or cutting boards after processing wild meat, you are removing microbial traces that UV cannot reach inside microscopic scratches. When you prepare grain salvaged from abandoned stores, you are eliminating spores and residue that accumulated during the collapse. Every task depends on the integrity of the water you use, and integrity is engineered, not assumed. You will find these filters where civilization once hid its maintenance, inside refrigerator compartments with built-in dispensers, under kitchen sinks in middle-class homes, screwed into office building filtration panels, packed into camping stores that stocked them for hikers who feared bad taste rather than chemical instability. Even in destroyed households, the filter cartridges often survive intact, overlooked because they do not resemble survival gear, but they are. In a broken world, the ability to produce clean wash water is not convenience. It is tactical superiority. The survivor who filters maintains structure. The one who does not gambles with variables they cannot measure. And gambling is not survival. Heat is not a guarantee. It is a spectrum, a variable, a threshold that determines whether pathogens die or endure. In the pre-collapse world, you never needed to think in numbers because the system thought for you. Restaurants calibrated their grills. Factories ran thermal kill cycles. Home appliances regulated temperature curves automatically. But after the fall, cooked becomes a meaningless word. Color, texture, and instinct are lies. Meat that looks ready can still shelter live bacteria. Stews can simmer without ever reaching lethal temperatures. Grains can harbor parasite cysts that survive careless boiling. The margin between safe and deadly becomes razor thin. And the only instrument capable of enforcing the truth is the digital infrared thermometer. This tool eliminates the guesswork that kills complacent survivors. It tells you, in precise numbers, whether your food has breached the pathogen kill zones, the temperature at which salmonella collapses, at which trichinella cysts rupture, at which botulinum spores lose their grip. Fire alone does not ensure this. Flame height lies. Steam lies. Visual cues lie. The thermometer does not. It becomes your arbiter of biological certainty in a world where biology has turned hostile. With it, you verify internal temperatures of game meat. You confirm that pot interiors, not just surface bubbles, reach sustained boiling. You measure reheated scavenged foods to ensure that dormant bacteria do not reawaken. You treat every cooking session as a controlled operation, not a ritual of hope. And you will find this device in places shaped by precision. Kitchens of restaurants and hotels stored them as professional standards. Backyard BBQ enthusiasts hoarded them for perfect roasts. Pharmacies stocked medical versions capable of reading surfaces with near equal accuracy. Cold storage warehouses used industrial infrared thermometers to verify their frozen supply chains. These environments were built on discipline, and discipline survives in the tools left behind. You are not seeking luxury. You are seeking enforcement of truth. Because in the apocalypse, the difference between warm enough and hot enough is the difference between pushing forward and dying quietly in the dark hours after a meal. Rot does not negotiate. It does not reveal itself through dramatic color shifts or theatrical smells the way you once believed. In the post-collapse world, spoilage is a chemical event long before it becomes a visual one. Anaerobic bacteria expand silently inside sealed containers. Proteins break down into ammonia and sulfur compounds that whisper rather than scream. Grains begin releasing volatile organic compounds as molds colonize them from the inside out. Meat scavenged from cold shadows may appear firm while already undergoing internal decomposition. Your senses cannot keep pace with chemistry. That is why the spoilage detection sensor, gas and VOC-based, is not a convenience, but an extension of your survival intelligence. It reads what the human body was never designed to detect. The sensor alerts you to the invisible gases produced during bacterial metabolism and organic decay. Ethylene rising from fruit on the brink of collapse. Ammonia drifting from proteins undergoing microbial breakdown. Volatile compounds signaling mold bloom, fermentation, or anaerobic contamination. These warnings are not theories. They are early-stage failures you would never notice until symptoms hit your bloodstream. With this sensor, you evaluate canned goods that survived explosions, fires, or impact damage. You scan sealed bags of grains or flour scavenged from abandoned homes. You test meat hung in improvised cold zones. You assess whether scavenged fats, oils, and packaged meals have quietly crossed the threshold from edible to fatal. The device becomes a chemical perimeter, your early warning system against the most deceptive killer in the new world, delayed poisoning. You recover this tool from environments built around precision and preservation. High-end refrigerators hid them deep in their internal modules, protecting produce from premature decay. Smart home ecosystems monitored air quality with VOC sensors embedded in discrete plastic housings. Research laboratories used handheld meters to detect off-gassing from experiments. Home improvement stores stocked indoor air quality kits purchased by civilians obsessed with fresh air rather than survival. All these artifacts remain scattered across the ruins, ignored by looters who never understood their purpose. But you are not one of them. You read gases, not guesses. You trust chemical truth over human optimism. In a world where a meal can betray you hours after eating it, the survivor who listens to invisible signals outlives the one who assumes. Fire is primitive, but survival is not. In the aftermath of collapse, flame alone is insufficient because heat without control is just noise, unpredictable, uneven, and capable of leaving the core of your food in the microbial kill zone dead zone. Too warm to store, too cool to neutralize pathogens. Parasites survive in pockets. Bacteria endure in dense tissues. Toxins persist in liquids that never reach a sustained boil. The civilian belief that if it's hot, it's safe is one of the most lethal myths carried into the apocalypse. To break that myth, the survivor requires a field-grade charcoal stove with a boil control system. Not just a fire source, but a precision engine of thermal certainty. This stove delivers stability. Charcoal burns with a predictable temperature curve, unlike scavenged wood soaked in moisture or chemical residues. The structure of the stove channels heat upward with minimal loss, allowing you to reach and maintain target temperatures long enough to rupture parasite cysts, collapse bacterial walls, and neutralize volatile contaminants that resist short, weak bursts of heat. With a controlled boil, you don't just cook, you sterilize. Grains scavenged from old storage regain safety. Root vegetables pulled from contaminated soil lose their microbial threat. Tough cuts of game meat yield to slow heat that kills what the wilderness hides deep inside. Even suspect liquids, soups, broths, salvaged canned contents become reclaimable through disciplined boiling rather than blind hope. And you will not find this tool in pristine survival stores. Those were looted on day one. You will find it in places shaped by endurance and repetition, the back rooms of small family restaurants that relied on charcoal for flavor and reliability, the forgotten storage sheds of street food vendors who cooked through rain and blackout, the rural households that never abandoned traditional stoves, the metal shops where steel drums, vent pipes, and scrap plates lie waiting to be turned into improvised combustion chambers. Even when no intact unit remains, components survive. Grates, housings, refractory plates, baffles, ready to be assembled by hands that understand necessity. Because in a world where resources dwindle and pathogens thrive, the capacity to produce controlled, weaponized heat is not craftsmanship. It is survival discipline. The undisciplined will burn fast and uneven, poisoning themselves with undercooked meat or half-boiled grains. The disciplined will build a thermal sanctuary, a place where food becomes safe by design rather than accident. In the apocalypse, the one who controls heat controls life. No single tool keeps you alive. Survival is not modular, it is sequential. Food safety in the collapse is a chain of operations where every link reinforces the next. Break one, and the entire system fails. Civilians search for a single miracle device. Survivors construct protocols. This is the dividing line. When you operate with discipline, the 6 tools stop being objects and become a unified doctrine that converts chaos into certainty. The integration is absolute. You do not test without sterilizing. You do not wash without filtering. You do not cook without verifying. You do not eat without assessing, and you never assume safety without enforcing it through thermal control. Every step becomes a barrier that poison must cross, and poison rarely crosses more than one. The chain begins with identification. The multi-spectrum test strip is your reconnaissance, the intelligent sweep before you commit resources. If the food fails this stage, you discard it immediately. There is no negotiation, no emotional attachment to scarcity. You deny risk at the point of origin. Once chemistry clears, you push forward to sterilization. The UVC wand destroys surface pathogens and neutralizes biological threats that cling to skin, fur, shells, or produce. It prepares the food for contact, not consumption. Next comes structural assurance. The carbon block microfilter transforms unsafe water into an operational tool, allowing you to wash without introducing new hazards. This expands your capability. You can reclaim dirty food rather than reject it. Once clean water has done its work, the digital infrared thermometer enforces internal truth. It confirms thermal penetration, kills guesswork, and ensures that your heat has meaning. Surfaces lie, numbers do not, and after heat, you verify integrity. The VOC spoilage sensor reads the gases of decomposition, detecting invisible failures that even fire cannot erase. It is your final chemical gatekeeper before food becomes fuel. Only then do you enter the final stage, elimination. The field-grade charcoal stove with boil control delivers the sustained, predictable temperature profile required to neutralize deep threats. Parasites hiding in dense tissue, spores resistant to short heating, contaminants that break down only under prolonged thermal assault. This stove is not the beginning of safety. It is the final command in a chain of enforcement. When all 6 tools operate in sequence, you rebuild a miniature version of the old world's food safety infrastructure, but portable, decentralized, and hardened for the wasteland. You create a self-contained system that does not rely on luck, intuition, or the false hope that you'll be fine. This protocol turns survival from a gamble into an algorithm. It transforms desperation into controlled action. In the apocalypse, the ones who live are not the strongest or the most ruthless. They are the ones who understand that safety is engineered, not imagined. The greatest contamination in a post-collapse world is not chemical, bacterial, or biological. It is psychological. The mind you inherited from the old world is a liability, trained by abundance, softened by convenience, corrupted by habits that once made sense under the protection of a functioning civilization. That conditioning whispers deadly lies, that food which looks fine is safe, that hunger justifies shortcuts, that sickness is unfortunate rather than lethal. In the collapse, these beliefs are not harmless. They are traps. They turn survivors into casualties long before the environment does. To endure, you must amputate these assumptions with the same ruthlessness you apply to infected wounds. The doctrine is simple. Your senses do not validate safety. Only data does. You must unlearn the idea that danger is visible. Spoilage begins at the molecular level, not the visual one. Toxins form without changing color. Parasites hide in tissues that look pristine. Canned goods remain deadly behind perfect labels. Fruit maintains its shape long after internal rot begins. The collapse requires a new cognitive operating system, one that rejects intuition and defaults to verification. Hunger must not pressure you. Scarcity must not seduce you. Desperation must not override your protocols. You must think like an inspector, measure like a technician, and judge like a machine. The world no longer rewards making do. It rewards precision. And when nostalgia attempts to deceive you, reminding you of kitchens where rinsing was enough, markets where freshness was guaranteed, or meals that never required fear, you silence it. The old world is gone. Its habits died with it. In the wasteland, you do not trust your instincts. You trust your instruments. And the survivor who embraces this mental shift is the one who still wakes up the next morning. Survival is not a matter of luck, strength, or brutality. It is a matter of discipline. In the ruins of the old world, death does not arrive as a dramatic event. It slips in quietly through negligence, through impatience, through the belief that this one time you can bend the rules. Every corpse found slumped beside a cold fire pit or curled near a half-eaten meal tells the same story. They treated food as hunger relief, not as a battlefield. They relied on instinct instead of verification. They acted like civilians in a world that no longer tolerates civilians. The collapse is a filter, and it only spares those who act with deliberate precision. Your tools are not accessories. They are extensions of your survival logic. The test strip is your scout. The UVC wand is your executioner. The carbon block filter is your structural assurance. The infrared thermometer is your truth enforcer. The VOC sensor is your chemical sentry. The controlled charcoal stove is your final line of sterilization. Used separately, each provides an advantage. Used together, they form a closed-loop system that denies toxicity every entry point. This is not improvisation. This is engineered protection. It is how you rebuild the invisible defensive grid that civilization once provided for you. Only now it exists in your pack, in your hands, and in the discipline that governs your actions. Understand this. The collapse does not forgive. It does not reward speed, bravery, or hope. It rewards only the survivor who never deviates from protocol. You are not here to gamble. You are here to outlast a world that has turned hostile to the unprepared. So you eliminate guesswork. You enforce process. You verify before you consume. The doctrine is final. In the apocalypse, you do not survive because you are careful. You survive because you are uncompromising. And the one who refuses to compromise becomes the one who remains when all others fall.